Hello, my name is Matthew, and I read Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a novel by Quentin Tarantino, and this is my cover. I downloaded it on my e reader, and I only recently learned about this from videos that were recommended to me while Quentin Tarantino um, has been doing his publicity tour talking about um, his new book. And he's on daytime talk shows, nighttime talk shows, and some of these interviews were some of the strangest things I've seen in quite a while. The talk show host or interviewer um, and Quentin Tarantino are almost talking about books or novels as if it's a surprising new discovery, saying things like, in Hollywood, um, there are a lot of movies that are actually based on books. And it's uh, presented unironically, and uh, also saying that sometimes there's movies that have novelized adaptation, and they take a movie and then they turn it into a book. And one of the talk show hosts shows a book, and it'll have that little sticker that says now a major motion picture, and says to the audience, like, you might not have ever seen a sticker like this. Very odd. One of the interviewers asks Quentin Tarantino what it was like to write a novel. This is his first published novel. And essentially, Tarantino says, um, in a lot of ways, it was a lot easier than his movies, because when he was finished writing it, there was nothing else to be done. He didn't have to um, find producers or studio or get casting directors or deal with actors. Um, there's no locations. All the work and fuss that only begins after you have a script, you don't have to bother with a novel, because all you have to do is write it and then you're done. And and it's also a very different Quentin Tarantino than any of his other press tours, where it's Quentin Tarantino, the director. Now we have Quentin Tarantino, the serious novelist. And I was quite curious what this thing could be. It's a novelization of his latest movie, his ninth movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I saw in the theater. I thought it was quite good. Not my favorite, but quite good. It's set in 1969 in Hollywood, um, starring Rick Dalton as nearly washed up actor, did television work, westerns, and then his friend, a stunt double, played by Brad Pitt. Rick Dalton is played by Leonardo DiCaprio. And so we see them just making their way through Hollywood. We also have Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate, which this whole world that we're witnessing is sort of swirling, revolving around an incident that's going to come. And we also have in the movie the feeling of Charles Manson. So we see the whole, not gang, but um, this whole operation around Charles Manson. And through all of these kind of pockets of characters that are operating separately and then have their intersections, we kind of get this slice of a time period. And the movie is beautiful. It has recreations of Sunset Boulevard with all of the period specific um, cars and shops and street lamps and um, all of the appropriate um, movie posters that would be up, and the songs that would be on the radio, and the shows that would be on the television. And there's long stretches of time where in the movie you're just sort of spending time with these people, like Brad Pitt uh, driving a Cadillac through town, and just a sequence that's wonderful. And then, like most Quentin Tarantino movies, there's these big set piece situations, and kind of bunched up throughout the movie. Rick Dalton, um, as a sort of aging movie star, worrying about losing his final grasp at a sustained movie star career, just turning out to be a washed out actor making Italian spaghetti westerns. Through the movie, we see him on set, dressed up as a villain. He wants to be a hero. He keeps getting these recurring roles where he's the bad guy. So we see him on set. We get a lot of background, kind of behind the scenes, what it's like to make a movie or make a TV show. We have Sharon Tate to kind of contrast Rick Dalton, who is a young, up and coming movie starlet. She's married to Roman Polanski, who at the time um, had directed Rosemary's Baby, among other things, was an extremely prominent, well-regarded director, in full swing, at the height prime of his height of his powers. And Cliff Booth, who's the stunt double. And when we follow Cliff around, we leave the glitzy world, or the seedy world of Hollywood, and go into a totally different world of what it's like to just be on the complete periphery of this huge Hollywood machine. He lives far away, out of town, in a little camper. He drives a little funny Volkswagen automobile, and he goes home in his little camper, and he has a pit bull. And it's one of the set piece scenes in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Comes home, there's this mean, muscular pit bull who's a sweetheart, and we get to see Brad Pitt make dinner for the dog. He makes dinner for himself. He has macaroni and cheese, and he opens up the cans of wet dog food. And the thing that we have looming is the Manson murders, the murder of Sharon Tate. And Tarantino is known, at this point in his career, he has made movies that have an alternate history. He's made these kind of parallel timelines of what would happen if things went a little bit differently. And a lot of the tension of the movie rests on how accurate is Tarantino going to be to historical fact. Another one of the set pieces in the movie is the Bruce Lee, Cliff Booth, so Brad Pitt, the stunt double, and Bruce Lee on the set of The Green Hornet. And they had this fight sequence. Bruce Lee is shown to be um, sort of like an obnoxious, uh, foul-mouthed or loud-mouthed um, diva on set, and is making statements like he could beat up Muhammad Ali, and a fight breaks out. And I started the book. Um, at first thinking it's bad. It's a bad novel. My first thought, though, was um, it's essentially the screenplay. He took a screenplay and um, it seemed like he was going to just try to squeeze it or futz around with it enough to make a novel out of it. So it starts very dialogue heavy. It's following, as I remember, the same sequence of events, meeting characters. Um, Dialogue is foul mouthed. Um, Quickly you realize that there's an ethereal voice. There's that omnipresent narrator looking from above. Everyone's third person, and um, the narrator is cursing, and it's hard to have vulgarity um, in a novel, in dialogue, and make it work. It's often unnecessary or ineffective. To have cursing from the ethereal voice, though, is uh, seems just like there's no winnable way of doing it. It just comes off as amateurish and cheap. Um, in the movies, as far as cursing goes, when you have Samuel L. Jackson or Joe Pesci or some of these fantastic actors, um, that cursing can really electrify a scene or give you a great sense of a character very quickly. In a movie, the time, um, the actions and events and the timing needs to keep bouncing through. There's not you're not afforded much time to luxuriate every character nuance the way you are in a book. But it's not just the screenplay. It turns out that he did make creative decisions with um, the actual plot, the way the story is told to us is slightly different. Um, I remember that in the interview junket for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the movie, many of the actors talked about how Tarantino would write backstories for each actor. And in this book, in the novel, you really get a sense that he's, for every character, you get um, way too much story. Maybe Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth should have a predominant amount of backstory, but um, a good writer, a good novelist could maybe dash off a line or paragraph, something efficient that can give you a whole sense of a person. Everyone's read a great book where you just read one line and you know a person. Um, and so much of the writing feels utilitarian or perfunctory, just stage direction. Someone walks across to the other side. They sit down where they're going to get up and they go in the kitchen and they're going to make coffee and they put something in the coffee cup. Um, Unnecessary details. Um, all of the characters, like in the movies, all of the characters are these mouthpieces for Tarantino. They all want to talk about movies. They all want to talk about television shows. Um, if there's a name brand that you can mention, the name brand is mentioned. And in an odd way. This is a Hollywood movie set in Hollywood, um, talking about film history and talking shop makes a lot of sense. But Cliff Booth, who is a World War II veteran, this kind of um, uh, battle worn outsider uh, who's now the stunt double slash driver of a washed up Western store. Um, we get his top 10 list of Akira Kurosawa films, or maybe it was the top five, but it doesn't make any sense that that would be in there. And then backstories. So these backstories that Tarantino was writing for these characters. Cliff Booth, um, his backstory is just uh, injurious um, to the character that we saw in the movie. He's despicable. Some of the things, the dog, these great dog scenes leading up to a terrific, explosive finale in the movie involving the dog, we find out that the dog was um, in lieu of a debt owed by someone else, and this person presents the dog um, as a dog fighting champion and says this dog never loses, and we get a sequence where Cliff Booth agrees, and they're going and having dog fights, and we're reading about um, dogs being tortured and killed. Um, there's supposed to be a little slight bit of heroism because the dog hasn't fully recovered, and the other person wants to put it directly into another fight and bet on the other dog um, to make all of this money. And Cliff murders the person on the spot. He murders several people throughout this book. In the movie, there's a sequence where we find out that Cliff was a murderer. He murdered his wife, and uh, in the movie it cuts to Brad Pitt on a boat holding one of those like fish spears or a whale spear, one of the harpoons, and then it's him on the boat with his harpoon, just staring at his wife, and then it cuts back, and so there's a trace of humor, but also ambiguity. What actually happened? And it's explicitly stated he harpooned her. He split her body in half. He then held her for 7 hours, talking to her until the Coast Guard show up, and he says it was an accident, and he gets away with it. He gets away with all of his murders. Um, just too much information. And the same thing goes for Manson and the whole Manson, Charles Manson clan. Um, he's the character in the novel that probably did not need a backstory or an explanation. And the more you know that whatever little bit of mystery or mystique that could possibly be there is stripped away. Not that it needs to come off as sensational or anything like that, but just for the merits of the book. And it was much better done. Everything was much better done in the movie. The big explosive ending in the movie is a tossed off line somewhere in the middle of the book. We get large portions where Rick Dalton, who is on set trying, he's an alcoholic and he's showing up drunk and he's a mess. There's long portions where we're just seeing the rehearsals as if it's now just a transcript or a novelization of what's going on in the show, which was just totally unnecessary. Almost felt more like filler than anything else. And my main and there's every page is filled with examples of just bad, lazy writing that um, any editor would be slashing through. If things saying things like, um, well, he dismissed what the person just said, and then the next bit of dialogue is the person acknowledging what the person said. So he didn't dismiss it, he acknowledged it. Being redundant, repeating, saying the same things over and over. um, and my takeaway is, I believe that if you read this, uh, the only thing to think is, like, wow, Quentin Tarantino is such a great director. Um, for all of the things that work in the movie, they work um, because of the production, the set design, the costumes, the actor, the casting choices, the actors' performances. In DiCaprio's um, role as Rick Dalton, he has a stutter, and it's a very mature, nuanced um, depiction of someone with a stutter. When he's reading his lines, when he's acting, um, he can speak perfectly well. Uh, when he doesn't know, when he doesn't have a script in front of him, he has this debilitating, halting stutter, and it's slight, um, and so well done by DiCaprio. In the book, Tarantino forgets that he has a stutter. Sometimes he stutters, other times he doesn't, and it's inconsistent whether or not he has a script in front of him or he doesn't. Um, for this despicable character, Cliff Booth, Brad Pitt brings all the charm and confidence in that kind of cool, laid back uh, performance that just comes off as natural and likable. Margot Robbie's Sharon Tate, and um, none of all of the wonderful things about the movie are not present in the book, and that includes the dialogue. It shows um, how much the performance um, elevates what's on the page. What's on the page is not good. Um, so this is my one day off. I spent the morning reading not a very good book. Um, so that's what I'll say. Let me know if you've read it, if you're a Quentin Tarantino fan, what you think of the movie, um, if you're interested in reading the book, anything like that. So thank you for watching, and leave a comment if you would like, and take care.